Hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you on Friday, January 19th, on behalf of Arcadia Economics for this week's weekly market wrap up. As usual, seems to be the case these days. Another exciting week. Man, it sure seems like the dollar these days is it's like one of those boxing matches where you're just watching someone get pummeled, wonder how much more they can take. But with that said, let's dig right into it because there were a few things here that I came across this week that, geez, are sure getting wild and certainly worth listening to. There was this interview on the X22 Report Spotlight with a fellow who goes by the name of London Paul that was really discussing a lot of what's been going on behind the scenes with the deep state, with Trump. Certainly, I get it that a lot of people don't like Trump. I see a lot of women are not fans of Trump. And certainly some of the individual comments he makes, yes, they seem a little bit silly at times or crude. Yet, if it's possible just to set that aside for a moment from the standpoint that the more I begin to see and understand what's going on, it's actually quite fascinating how things are much different than we've been led to believe, which is really what this interview gets into. And as you can see, here's the name down there if you do want to go take a look and check it out, which I would highly recommend, because essentially what London Paul gets at here is that Trump was sent to the White House for one purpose and one purpose only, which was and is to bring down the deep state. Now, for those of you that might not be familiar with that term, whether you think of it as the banking cartel, government matrix, Illuminati, New World Order, basically the group of folks that have been running the show in many areas of life, whether it's military or the things that go on with GMOs or chemtrails or whatever it may be, or Pfizer drugs. So there's two things happening right now, is that a lot of these people who have been doing some not so nice things for a long time are getting caught, exposed, and arrested. Continue to hear a lot of arrests associated with the child pedophile ring have been taking place. And I guess Trump, in a sense, was put in the position, again, now this is, nobody perhaps knows for sure the exact details going on behind the scenes, but I would say pretty safe to say that the generalization of it would be that put in a position where he's going to take a lot of crap and there's going to be a lot of things said, yet in the end, whether it's exposing things that have been reported with Uranium One or the Clintons or the Clinton Foundation or just a lot of these other families that have been involved in banking and government and basically ripping the people off to an extent that it's kind of tricky to know how much detail to go into at times, because some of it is so wild and unbelievable that I can understand it's shocking, and continue to hear the theme that a lot of the information isn't being released all at once because it would simply be too much for people to handle. But basically, a lot of your big names that are making laws and we've been trusting to guide our system have taken advantage of that trust to the degree that names like Clintons and Bushes you may hear of getting arrested, with some unfortunate things. For example, one is that keep hearing about that Haiti earthquake relief fund, which apparently a lot more of the money went to the Clintons than anyone in Haiti. By all means, don't take anything I'm saying as fact. Go out, do your own research. I can just share some of the conclusions that I'm coming to. Again, there is a lot of misinformation out there, although I do feel pretty comfortable in saying that a lot of this has actually already begun happening. Won't see so much of it about it on the mainstream news, But again, that's why I put this interview here with London Paul. And perhaps the thing that I've listened to it a couple of times in the past week, and if I could leave you with one takeaway that, again, maybe I'm extrapolating a little bit, but this would be my understanding, where essentially if you've grown up in the U.S., 39, so anywhere in the past couple of decades, we've been seeing U.S. go supposedly to free other countries from their dictators and overthrow the bad governments, as we were led to believe. Yet, ironically enough, one of the things that Paul mentions in his interview is that whether it's the Russian or the Chinese government, it's not really the U.S. that they have the problem with. It's really this deep state group which has essentially hijacked the government as we know it. So ironically enough, the whole time we've been thought the U.S. was going out to liberate these other foreign nations from the bad guy, it turns out the ones that were doing that, and people in the U.S. have been the ones that have been trapped under the despotic regime. And now it's Russia, China, and other nations, along with Trump, that are fighting to remove that. So wildly stunning stuff. I don't even know whether I want to look at the comments for this one. I understand, you may completely see it differently or disagree, which of course is fine. And by all means, encourage any discussion down there. If you can keep things polite and civil is good. But also listen to the interview and see if it matches the things you're seeing and hearing. Along with that, another interview between, there's Greg Hunter, and there is Dr. Dave Janda, talking about a lot of the similar things. And some of these things you can go out and verify now because they are taking place. Quick, interesting comment that Dave Janda mentioned in his interview here. If you've been hearing about how there was supposedly an incoming missile alert to Hawaii that was up for 38 minutes before it was canceled, and then the main theme has been that it was a fat finger issue. I'm hearing that's not the case, and when you think about the logistics involved, kind of seemingly be a little implausible. What's interesting is in his interview, Janda, who I find to be a pretty thorough, honest, fact and evidence-driven guy. So when he says this, it just, again, you're going to have to go out and make your own decisions on what is true, what is fact. But to the degree of someone I respect mentioned in this interview about the Chinese or the Hawaii situation, he said that he has a source that he trusts that over the years has told him a lot of things that seemed wild or implausible at the time, yet have always turned out to be true. So again, factor that in as you will. But basically, according to this source, and you can hear more about this in the first third of his interview here, there was indeed a missile, and there was a missile intercepted, and his source is telling him that it was sent from a faction of the Chinese military, which, given everything we know about U.S. government response, U.S. government has a history of responding even without provocation. So if that is indeed the case, I don't know, it would certainly be a significant move. And we'll see, A, if that's actually what happened, B, how that unfolds. But just the idea that it's even being introduced as a possibility that essentially China could have shot a missile at the U.S. Kind of hope that that's inaccurate. But again, as Janda being someone I respect, again, you can take a listen to the interview and see for yourself how to factor that in. Bigger point being that things are developing and happening. That's why you're seeing moves and a lot of money go into cryptos. Essentially, if going back to the first video, if any of this stuff is near or true as reported, and the system is really that fractured, so if we're finding out these things that are happening politically, And then along with that, a lot of these are the same things, that same people and names that are involved in some of the financial scandals. Certainly interesting to think about the market implications should these things continue to filter out, which my understanding is that we are going to hear things in 2018 that will be stunning to the degree of disbelief, but sometimes that's the way the world goes, so just trying to keep you ahead of that. Here we have Trump says Democrats are needed to avert government shutdown with just a few hours until the deadline. Here Pelosi saying the bill is doggy-doo, encouraging comments as always. Whether the government shuts down tonight or not, probably whether it's tonight or tomorrow or in a couple of days, there will be some agreement that we agree on. We're going to spend more money that we don't have. That's really the track record. Keep in mind, they're not talking about making any cuts here. They can't even agree on how much to increase spending, let alone how to actually cut anything. And not shockingly enough, guess who actually is noticing? And yes, that would be China, because is China walking away from the U.S. Treasury market? Article we wrote here on Arcadia Economics this week, because that was following a report out of Bloomberg that China may be considering slowing or halting their purchase of treasuries. I think we talked about this briefly last week. And, why? I guess there's some speculation of whether they've actually said this, or is this accurate or not. But when you think about it, why wouldn't they want to slow or halt their purchase of treasuries? Going back here, here it is this late in the game, debt over 20 trillion, and still the politics are so divisive that it's bringing the government to a verge of shutdown as opposed to any legitimate signs for progress. And in the article, they mentioned one of the things China's going to be looking to is the supply of U.S. debt. There's little to point to that that's not going to continue to increase. And at the same time, what else do we find happening is China moving forward with the petro-yuan, basically saying screw it to the petrodollar. Also, a Chinese rating agency downgraded U.S. debt this week. So does Wall Street seem to care? No, but when you have your largest creditor saying as publicly and blatantly as possible, we've had enough, we're stepping away. Now even the possibility of, and in that Dave Janda report with the potential missile from China, he did mention that it could be a rogue faction of the Chinese military. So whether that's representative of the main essence of what the Chinese government is trying to do, again, these are questions that will be answered in the coming months and years, yet still not an ideal situation, which is why continuing to own gold or silver whenever this finally blows up, in my opinion, is wise. And of course, why again, people are turning to cryptocurrencies. We did see the cryptos get absolutely destroyed over this past week, although have rebounded a bit. Let's take a look at Litecoin here real quickly. Trading about 190 bucks, had been over, let's see if we can get the chart here. Come on. All right. So Litecoin had been, I think got over 400 at its peak, was down, I think as low as maybe 160 this week. And again, if you're investing in the cryptos, I think this is something you should be prepared for, that you're going to have a lot of volatility. It's not going to be a smooth road yet. Why are people putting money into the cryptos? Because a lot of people are seeing what's happening with the dollar. The handwriting is there. So it's a matter of waiting until whether you have a real fracture in the dollar or taking action now. That's, to me, what the cryptos are signifying. And I just wonder if we've seen this much growth in the crypto prices already, yet still Wall Street's dollar-based system is in effect as we know it. I mean, if you really have something like 2007, 2008, and people are really getting worried and taking money out of the stock market and looking at the cryptos as the safe haven, which I believe in time they will. Yes, they're incredibly volatile, but at least there is some finite value there. I mean, even if you think there is nothing to Bitcoin or the idea doesn't make sense, if nothing else, it can't be printed, whereas the dollar, every opportunity they get to print more of them, they do, and at least you know what's going to happen with that. So when there's any sort of market chaos, just interesting to me to think what would happen. I mean, if we've seen this in the cryptos now, and then you have a crash in the markets, then what would you really see? Because again, the pricing, I do believe we're seeing the beginning stages of a hyperinflation of the dollar, where certainly there is buying of cryptos, yet at times the way the pricing gets so manic, there has to at least be some component there of it's the dollar that's losing value in addition to the cryptos that are gaining value, because remember, it's just a fraction. And if the crypto did nothing but the dollar collapsed, crypto prices would be infinite if you're just adjusting mathematically using basic fraction math. So with that said, geez, we're only 2 or 3 weeks into 2018, but fascinating things are happening. I think we've reached a point where a lot of the libertarians or sound money advocates who've been saying, hey, the dollar debt, the U.S. debt structure is not a feasible or sustainable situation, and one day we're going to see some friction here. And the last couple of weeks, for the first time, I'm feeling as if some of that has actually arrived, which by all means isn't something to be cheering about, but to the degree that I think there are things that we can do to prepare and stay safe and be vigilant. And hopefully this video helped point some of that out. So leave your comments below. If you have any questions, love to know what's on your mind, and we will see you again next week. Thanks.
The land of Arcadia.